Now, without any transition, we're going to roll into our last session of the week, a celebration of the one and only Dave Darland. And we have
And here we go, Francis, going from big drag racing again, we're going to grassroots open wheel racing, honoring Dave Darland.
Absolutely, and what a legend! And then you and I have known Dave for a very long time, from our
Yes,
Steve Lewis
when
days.
I first started at PRI 25 years ago with Steve Lewis, Dave was probably the first racer I've ever met. I'm all, oh my God, he's a real racer. So it's an honor to have him on today.
So, and to celebrate Dave, we are going to bring some of his friends. Yeah. So I see on the screen Mike Kerchner, who's been with us many times this week. And now this is the grand finale, Mike.
Yes, it is. The end of 5 days of outstanding content about motorsports, the leaders of the sport, the racers, and so many others.
Absolutely. And I see that Dave is with us. Mark is with us. I believe Pat will be with us as well. And when everybody is on, we'll let you carry on. So we're going to ask Dave, Mark, and Pat to start their video, and we should be rolling.
Share video and share screen.
Good to see you, Pat, Mark, and then the legend himself, Mr. Darland. So we need Dave to start his video, and hopefully we're going to get this happen anytime soon.
Pat, I think you can probably lead the way.
Right. I think Dave Argabright is going to join us at some point.
I do not believe Dave is. Dave had a sudden conflict come up.
Okay. I think Bones and I can handle this. Bones Bourcier and I will certainly be more than happy to be involved in this celebration of Dave. I mean, let's set the stage. You know, sometimes when you're in the middle, and Bones has obviously written a book on Dave, the People's Champ. I've covered so many of Dave's races over the years, both as an announcer and a writer. Have watched his growth as a racer and as a human being and a man and a spokesperson for the sport. When you're in the middle of these things, sometimes you have a sense that you're in the presence of greatness, but there are times when you can pause and reflect. And we're talking about a man who spent 52 years in racing, 42 years in a sprint car, approached nearly 900 USAC national starts, multiple track championships at Lincoln Park, Kokomo Speedway, etc. His 62 USAC wins are #1 all time. His 106 combined USAC national wins. I think this is, to me, what is the most striking. It's 4th all time, and it's 4th all time behind names like A.J. Foyt, Rich Fogler, and Mel Kenyon. That's what we're talking about here. 24 straight years with a USAC national win. And I think Bones would chime in on this. Beyond all of those numbers and all of the greatness, and the third member of the USAC Triple Crown Club, was the relationship that he built with fans and officials and peers across the spectrum. I don't know if any individual driver who won more sportsmanship awards, more awards that were built as much on his character as well as his driving. The Pat O'Connor Award, he was recognized by the Hoosier on Racing Fan Club, multiple-time Hall of Fame winner, Sprint Car Hall of Fame, Harf Hall of Fame, recognized by DARF over in Dayton. Bones, this is one of the most celebrated drivers of our time. I think you would agree. And I think you would agree for all the reasons I mentioned. That's why he is so worthy of a moment in the sun that we're offering him here.
Pat, I think Bones might have dropped off there.
Did he drop off on me?
I don't see his picture up there in the rail anymore.
Well, I hope he comes back and joins us. But I'll then turn to you, Mike, as someone who's been in the end of documenting this guy's career. I think you would agree it's been remarkable.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. And you know, you get a little jaded after 30 years and of covering the sport, but still, you know, certain guys are in a class of their own, are that, oh my God, I can't believe I saw that guy race so many times, you know, and Dave Darland is one of those guys, and he'll always be in my top 5 or 10 racers of all time. Um, and you know, I can't believe the time went so fast. And I'm sure
Right.
Dave can't either.
Right, right. I see a red spot. Bones, are you with us? We'll keep an eye on Bones when he gets back in. Dave, I was speaking to you directly. I think one of the things that gave me the greatest joy this year was what I think all of us had hoped, was that you would go out as a winner. And by gosh, you went out and you won yourself a race in 2023. That had to feel great. Unmute.
I think he's on mute. Yeah.
Can we send him a note? Dave, unmute.
Dave, you're on mute.
I guess we have
Probably
a little technical challenge, and yeah, Mark is having a little technical challenge, and it looks like Dave, we can't hear him either. So this
Hi,
is
Pat.
what
How are you?
There he goes.
Ah,
We got
there
Dave.
you are.
There we go. You heard what I said. You were
I
able
did.
to go out a winner.
Yeah. Yep, I was, and I was able to win Kokomo at some point last summer. So it was great to get a win at Kokomo again on my last career, my last year of starts.
You know, Dave, for you, to me, the fact that you started out at the Kokomo Quarter Midget Club, obviously this was a quest between you and your dad, Bob,
Yeah.
who we all enjoyed so much, and just his whole approach and attitude. I mean, it's one thing to win, but you won at your hometown track where you've been such a fan favorite for some time. What did it feel like when you crossed underneath the checkered flag and you had told me earlier in the year, I don't know if I can win a USAC race again, but I think I can win a local show again. And by gosh, you did it. What did that feel like?
It certainly was great. You know, if it's always great to win, and it felt good to get the victory. And you know, like you said, at Kokomo, that's where I won my first race ever at Kokomo in sprint cars back in 1986.
Wow.
I won Kokomo, and so here I won again. I won my last sprint car race at Kokomo Speedway on 2023. So it was great.
5 decades, 5 different decades.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, it is
5
crazy.
decades of sprint car racing.
Right. You know, Mike, it's interesting because we have followed the sport long enough, and we know the situation. And there's no use, you know, kicking this can further down the road. But you know, there was a time when a guy like Dave Darland from right in Indiana came to USAC and excelled. He would get the chance in Indianapolis, and very few people have had careers this long. I mean, then to go close to 900 starts. He laid it on the 900 times with USAC, not just not a sprint car. I mean, to have had that sort of longevity, Mike, that's something that's just truly special to me.
Oh, there's no question about it. I mean, that doesn't happen. And, you know, you look at racers today and especially the younger group and the way they drive, and you think, you know, and you try to compare them to guys who've had careers like Dave or Steve Kinzer, and you know that there's no way this guy is going to make it that long.
Right. His bones
It is crazy.
Way too much equipment to have a career that long.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We've I started out with my dad racing back in 1982, and I turned 16 in 82. And we started racing that year. I turned 16 in September of 82, so didn't have much left of that year. We ran 4 or 5 times, and then so 83 basically when I started, and been racing ever since. We ran about 100 races a year for 15 years in a row, I think, and so it's been a long career, and I certainly do like it. We've had a lot of success at it.
Dave, one of the interesting things, and Mike gets at it a little bit. Justin Grant, who obviously you've had the chance to race with, and now is a two-time USAC champion. Mm-hmm. Justin Grant said something to me that it always stuck with me, and he said, when I came into Indiana, this is a direct quote, I came in at the end of the respect era. And he said very specifically, he said, I would get myself in trouble and a guy like Dave Darland would let me out of it. In other words, you knew he was in trouble, and instead of running him up into the wall or down in the track, you gave him a little bit of room, a little bit of respect for him to get the ship righted. And I always had the sense that that was the way that your dad taught you to race.
Yeah, it is. He, my dad was more aggressive than I was, really, but I knew that you just had to take things and give things and ask for forgiveness, at a later date. So it's just the way it goes, and I knew that people make mistakes, really, and it's just the way it goes, and so I knew that Pat or Justin, he made a little mistake, but it was something we was gonna deal with at some other time. But
right.
but yeah, he's a good race car driver for sure, and he learned from it, and
he did.
He learns well.
Right.
He did good.
Bones, is Bones with us now?
Can you guys see me and hear me?
We can. Yes. Bones, Bones, obviously you wrote.
I can't believe that I'm lower tech than Dave Darland is. This is really bothering me.
Well, you may want to talk to Dory. She can provide some emotional support.
Yeah.
I remember, Bones, before you wrote a book on Dave, The People's Chance, you called me for an interview. You interviewed me on a story you did on Dave. And you called me on the phone. And I remember this distinctly because I remember how you wrote it. And I said, he's just refreshing. And you wrote refreshing. That's the way to describe it. So, and we're going back years ago when you wrote that particular piece. And even then, you thought of Dave as a refreshing, sort of different kind of cat when it came to racing.
Yeah, what's always been cool to me is it's very rare that a guy who wins so often remains popular across the board, in the pits and the grandstands everywhere. And that was the refreshing thing to me. I mean, you'd never get anybody to say a bad word about Dave. I think everybody in the pits knew that if they tangled with him, it was an accident. And there weren't many of those. He was a guy that showed up, did his job, did it to the best of his ability, and obviously at a very, very high level, and didn't make a lot of waves. He did his thing, and he did it the way that I think we'd like every racer to do it. Not running into people, not screaming and hollering in the pits, not trying to be a big personality or a brand. Dave Darland is just Dave Darland, and he showed up for, what'd you say, 900 USAC starts and all those other starts that we've seen on Friday and Saturday nights at the quarter miles here around Indiana. And he's still refreshing. I mean, I hate to say it with him sitting right there, but I always love seeing Dave and love talking to him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Bones. I appreciate that.
To your point, one of my favorite memories in my years at Kokomo Speedway, it literally is one of my favorite, but I don't know, maybe if I was announcing the night, but Dave and Trey House tangled at Kokomo, and Trey House probably still is, but he was a tough guy. I mean, Trey House was not afraid to stand nose to nose with Jack Hewitt. That's all you need to say about that. I mean, he was just a hard-nosed, really good race driver. And so Dave and Trey tangled at Kokomo, and one of the early wines, who was one of Dave's sponsors, is just hopping, man. I mean, he's screaming in the pits, he's yelling and carrying on. And by God, this is nonsense. And they're going on. And I look at the entrance to the pits, and here come Trey and Dave, and they're side by side, and they're laughing. And Trey says, I ran that same line 5 laps in a row, and I switched it up. Dave didn't know I was there. And it was like, that's just the way it goes. But Bones, I think to your point, it's the credit you have in the bank. Steve Kinzer made mistakes. AJ Foyt made mistakes. Tony Stewart made mistakes. Kyle Larson makes mistakes. But when you have credit in the bank over the long haul, a lot of people say, you know what? That's a racing deal.
Yeah, I think they'll give it to you. I think you're right. You know, when I first moved out here, the end of '96, beginning of '97, Dave was already somebody. You know, everybody knew who he was. He was one of the top guys, and yet he was just entering what I kind of see as a golden period. And he had some battles, you know, back then with Tony Elliott and just so many guys on the local level. And when you do that night after night, you're going to rub wheels. And yet I never saw, you know, anybody point a finger at Dave, and he wasn't the kind of guy that was going to stomp around and point a finger at them. It was just if one guy got into the other guy, it was just incidental contact. And like I said a little bit ago, I think that's the way we'd want every racer to be. They're not all that way, unfortunately, but it's cool to see people go through their whole careers with that code of, you know, trying to race the right way, not just racing the right way, but making it a point to race the right way.
Yeah. It's been a fun career, and we've had a lot of success at it, and
Yes.
some mistakes, and you just got to go with it and deal with it the best you can.
I want to go back to a comment, Bones, that you made, which I think, you know, whoever is watching and listening in, I think this point needs to be underscored personally. And that is, you know, USAC and traditional sprint car racing, I'm going to overstate this, but might have been hanging a little bit on by a thread to some degree. Obviously, the World of Outlaws came in, were incredibly popular. They had Steve Kinzer and Sammy Swindell and Doug Wolfgang. The All-Stars were tough. Bloomington Speedway, when I first came to Indiana, was a wing sprint car track. A lot of people forget that. And in my opinion, in my personal opinion, the renaissance of traditional sprint car racing occurred because of 3 men: Dave Darland, Tony Elliott, and Kevin Thomas. And there were other great race drivers. I mean, Mike Mann, who worked with Dave, outstanding. Derek Davidson, who's obviously a crew chief in IndyCar, outstanding. Yeah. Gary Fisher. I could go on and on. But those 3 guys, night after night, particularly when I was working at Kokomo Speedway, and a lot of people don't remember this. Kokomo Speedway at one point was as flat as a pancake.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd watch those 3 guys on Sunday night, and I'd sit there think, I'm getting to watch this every week, and I'm even getting paid to do this. I mean, would you agree, Bones, that they just raised that bar over that period?
Yeah, and I think we all in our minds center a lot of it around Kokomo and Putnamville, yeah, and Bloomington. But I remember races at North Vernon and other, joints, yes, where, and a lot of times it was Dave and Tony, or Dave and Kevin and Tony, but it was 2 of the 3 of them, if not all 3.
Right.
And you got to mix Jack Hewitt in there with that bunch, and the guys you mentioned, Pat. It was, honestly, some of the best racing I've ever seen. And one way that I feel awfully lucky is I think when we grow up with people from the time we're all kids and we see them start racing, we don't always realize, that they've become legends because they're still your buddy, they're your peer. I felt really lucky that when I got out here, Dave was already somebody. Kevin Thomas was already somebody. Tony Elliott was always somebody. And I never took it for granted. I knew I was seeing something, right, that I was going to remember for a long time, and something that was, going to go down in history as legendary. And like I said, I'm lucky enough that I had my eyes open to that when I got here. And then to see that wave of guys that came after, whether it was the Jason Lefflers and the Dave Steeles and the Tracy Hineses, you know, the guys that are kind of a handful of years younger. And to watch those guys kind of have to step up their games to battle with Dave and Tony and the rest of the veterans, that was cool too, because I think they got to learn the right way from guys who did it the right way. And I think that's important. You know, if Dave and Tony were knuckleheads who crashed into each other all night, those kids would have learned the same way, you know, and they weren't. They learned ethics, manners.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember a young driver telling me in Bloomington, he says, I can't believe Dave's still out here doing this. And he sort of said it dismissively. And at the time, this kid was a pretty good racer. And I think Dave won 30 more USAC races after that comment was made, which I laughed about every time he won. Every time he won, I wanted to call this guy on the phone and go, hey, you know, Dave won another race, by the way. Dave, let's take it in another direction. When you had an opportunity to get in a Silver Crown car for Galen Fox,